independent thoughts, independent life. This is Chad Benson.
We've talked for a long time about approaching a constitutional crisis. We are now in it.
You keep using the word. I don't think it means what you think it means.
Yeah, I don't think so either. That right there, Jerry Nadler. Do I? God, I sit back and I just think to myself, does it matter? I mean, look, nothing's getting done. I don't care what you guys do anymore. I don't even want to talk about Trump and Russia. I don't want to talk. If you guys are going to do something, let the rest of us know, right? Let the media know first because they're very excited. I often wonder, like, what would they talk about today? Let's think about this for a second, right? So let's step back for a moment and say, there's no Don Jr., there's no constitutional crisis. That, like, they come in, they say, all right, here's the thing. Media, you guys, this is it, right? You can't talk about, there's a 24-hour no talk zone about Trump, Russia, collusion, go. And that's kind of what I think it would sound like. So for 24 hours, you can't do.
The collusion part of the Mueller report recounts the constant interaction of Trump operatives with Russian adversaries.
If you think there's no collusion and no obstruction, you haven't read the Mueller report.
Mr. Trump gets on the telephone with Mr. Putin and has a 90-minute conversation or something like that where he can see on a phone call that he smiled at him.
That's your leader, the commander-in-chief.
We've talked for a long time about approaching a constitutional crisis. We are now in it.
All right, so you can't talk about that. You can't bring it up. You can't talk about Russia. You can't talk about Mueller. You can't talk about Barr. You can't talk about collusion. You can't talk about Don Jr. You can't talk about any of that stuff. There's just what do you think they do? Like, what's a day look like? What, remember there's 3-4 years ago that a movie, I think it was A Day Without a Mexican. Remember that movie? Could you imagine a day without Russia, collusion, constitutional crisis, impeachment? That would be a day of silence in the media world. Well, what do you say? What say you, the other 8 people on the panel? I'm wearing pants. Do you remember Anchorman? Remember that? It would be like brick. I love lamp. That's what I think. It would be like. That's all they talk about. There's other stuff to talk about. Case in point, what's going on in, I don't know, North Korea?
Kim Jong-un made a commitment to President Trump that he would not launch ICBMs. Those are the intercontinental ballistic missiles that could potentially reach the United States. And he also said he would not carry out any more nuclear tests. Well, these missiles that were fired today, they are ballistic missiles, and they're short range, and they were fired from the western part of North Korea all the way towards the Sea of Japan. But they don't meet those parameters. So, in effect, Kim Jong-un is not breaking his pact with President Trump, but they are definitely a sign that North Korea is trying to get its message across the United States.
Yeah. Saber rattling, sanctions, and all of the stuff that's going on. And I'll tell you what people are not understanding. The sanctions are hurting them, and the tariffs in China are hurting China. There's a lot of stuff that's happening that has zero to do with the other stuff and all to do with, hey, this is what politics should look like. This should be the debate we're having. We should be talking about this. Hell, even when it comes to something like China.
Senior Trump administration officials will begin meetings with senior Chinese officials tonight in Washington. President Trump has threatened to raise tariffs from 10 to 25% on $200 billion of Chinese goods by the end of the week because he says trade talks with China are going too slowly. China says it will retaliate if the president moves forward with that threat, but didn't offer specifics. Economists warn that an escalation in this trade tit for tat will rattle markets and could hurt the U.S. economy.
Yeah, it could. The difference between us and China is we can keep everything in-house. We can produce everything ourselves. We could literally shut the doors, which we'll never do because, as we know, with immigration. But we could do that. We'd be fine. China needs us a lot more than we need them. And they overstepped here. They stood up and they said, you know what? I could take you. We could take you. You want to do this? Let's do this. And it was too early in the game for them. And there's a reason while Trump says I'm going to do this and I don't want to have these trade talks, they're not going. There's a reason that second in charge in China got on an airplane and he's coming over to try to hold trade talks on Friday. There's a reason for that. And the uncomfortableness that's there, you've got a stagnant economy over there in China right now. You've got 1 billion plus people to feed, and people, hey, you can take away their freedoms if you give them some financial freedom and give them something to worry about. They worry less about the fact that they can't do certain things. But when everything goes to hell in a handbasket, that's when you need to worry. China got no time for this. And guess what? He's rattling his saber over there in North Korea because he's hungry. They're hungry. Nobody's paying attention to him. His people are going to struggle. It's been a bad year when it comes to his crops. Stuff's not happening. He wants sanctions lifted. He wants to start doing some things a little bit better. He wants better wine and women. It ain't good for him right now. He's frustrated. Pay attention, pay attention, pay attention. And while that's going on, oh yeah, there's something else that's happening right now.
This is Jim Ryan in Texas. The rising numbers of families arriving from Central America means that increasingly Border Patrol agents like Herman Rivera spend their days providing food, water, and medical help to the newly arrived before then busing them to detention facilities.
So it takes up a lot of hours, and what happens is it just leaves a lot of areas vulnerable to people trying to avoid apprehension and narcotics.
In April, more than half of the migrants apprehended at the southwest border were traveling as families, many with children as young as infants.
Yeah. How many people? We're breaking records now. Month after month, we're breaking records. We're absolutely breaking records. Nothing seems to be getting done about it the way it should. We're not paying attention the way we should be. It's all been taking all of the eyes that for 6 weeks were kind of on immigration and the battle at least was there and people were paying attention. That is now dissipated because everybody's focusing about what's going on and that circle there, right? That beltway. Oh, pay attention because we're coming. This is what's happening. We're coming. Here we come. We're getting you. This is it. Immigration is a huge issue. It's a massive issue. Massive. And if you look at the numbers that are coming here, that is huge. Huge. Big, big, big. When you look at what's happening in Guatemala, in El Salvador, and Honduras, what is it, like 1% of their population has fled here since September? That's insane. That is insane. But not being talked about. We need to talk about those things. Absolutely must be talked about. 100%. We need to fix immigration. There's a few things we need to do. One of those things is right now, if you're coming here from another country and you land in Canada and then you try to apply for asylum here, you can't do that. By law, you have to apply for asylum in Canada because it's the first safe country. We need the same kind of pact with Mexico, which is one of the things they're pushing for, which essentially means if you have a credible fear and you're running from Honduras, El Salvador, Guatemala, and you get to Mexico and you come here and apply for asylum, right now, you can apply for asylum here, but you've passed through Mexico, which is a safe country, but you've come here. I mean, we could debate how safe Mexico is. We need the same kind of deal with Mexico. We need to get the opportunity to bring our Border Patrol agents in groups and start getting them registered as immigration agents as well as border agents so they can do the credible fear hearing test right there so we can speed up the process. There's a lot that needs to be done. But with what do you hear? None of that stuff. None of that stuff. It's all quiet. Quiet, because we're too busy focusing on things that, in essence, matter to people who wear suits and ties in the Beltway and who are on the television. If there's really going to be an impeachment, you'll hear about it, right? You'll hear about it. If there's going to be an impeachment, yeah, you'll hear about it. But the rest of this stuff, it needs to be dealt with. right? We've got we've got an escalating situation in North Korea again, with the potential trade war in China going on and continuing to go on, and it may get bigger. And we have an immigration problem that's seeing us break records on a daily, weekly, and now monthly basis. You wouldn't know it. 323-538-2423 at Chad Benson Show. Here's your Twitter. You can tweet at us. Love hearing from each and every one of you. Check out the old Instagram as well, right? That's, I think, everything that I mentioned there's all owned by Facebook, right? No, Twitter's not. Twitter's not. But everything else. Instagram is. Facebook is. WhatsApp is. I got all of those. WhatsApp! I don't know. This is me not being woke as a Ute. I just don't get the whole WhatsApp. I just use it as a texting service. I didn't realize how many people actually used it. 323-538-2423 at Chad Benson Show. There's your Twitter. AMAC, amazing organization. Work with so many politicians to try to do things like make and keep Social Security solvent for you and for everybody else. Common sense immigration reform. They offer all kinds of things and recommendations to many politicians all over, saying, hey, look, these are the things we can do to make things like Social Security solvent, not just in the next 5 years, 10 years, but well beyond without raising taxes. Yeah, they're a great organization, and the benefits are incredible. Retail, restaurant, hotel discounts, everything you can think of. And here's the great thing. They're giving my listeners, that's you guys, 1 year free. 1 year free, right? They don't even want your credit card. 1 year free. Simple, easy. All you have to do is sign up. 888-355-1617 is the phone number, 888-355-1617, or go to amac.us/Chad. That's amac.us/Chad. amac.us/Chad. They're going to treat you right. They're putting their money where their mouth is, and they will impress. amac.us/Chad. It's the Chad Benson Show.
Feel free to punk this punk rocker any time of the day or night. Reach Chad on Twitter at Chad Benson Show and on Instagram at Chad Benson Show. And oh yeah, the Chad Benson Show on Facebook too. Punk that.
We will run out of energy on Earth. This is just arithmetic. It's going to happen.
He sent a wiener pics to his girlfriend, and then it got into the Inquirer. That's Jeff Bezos. He'd be worth $20 trillion. People are like, hey, that's the guy that sent a naked picture to his girlfriend. So he's going up. He's building it. He's going up. We're going to space because we're going to run out of energy. And we're like, hey, we've done... Look, I'm going to be 100% honest with you. If we run out of energy on this planet, if we run out of stuff and we don't advance and we can't get any better with renewable energy and all of that stuff, it's going to take time. Look, people say, oh, Chad, you're a fossil fuel guy. No, what I am is let's find a better way to do things that's better for the environment. Let's do it in a way that's affordable for everybody and it's consistent and reliable without destroying our economy. Yeah, and cleaner. I want that. But let's just say we do destroy and run out of everything we have. Do you think us going to another planet or somewhere else is a good idea? Hey, we screwed up the last place, but we just want to come and see if we can screw up this one too.
It'll soft land in precise way, 3.6 metric tons onto the lunar surface.
Ooh. Now, nobody's allowed to own the moon at all. Just to let you guys know, nobody's allowed to own the moon. So that was a compact they put together many, many years ago, right? That, okay, look, here's the deal, right? And I think we did it because, like, okay, we'll be nice. We'll be totally nice. Knowing full well, we're the only ones who are ever going to get there. People may come later, but by then we'll have our flags all over the place. 323-538-2423 at Chad Benson Show is your Twitter. You can tweet at us each and every day. At least we try to. Some days, I'll be honest, man, we get really going and we forget to, but I hate when I do that. So today, kids, we're going to do something good for you. We're going to give you our favorite thing, the urban word of the day.
It's time for the urban word of the day, fam.
What? Right now?
Time to get a little more hip on the streets.
I can't understand a word you're saying.
Urban word of the day.
Anti-stalker. Oh, man, I'm an anti-stalker. Now, you know what a stalker is, right? Somebody's looking for you, right? Scaring you, stalking you out. A spy or an intelligence gatherer. An anti-stalker is the exact opposite. You want to know everywhere this person is going to be so you can avoid them. And we all know what that's about, right? Like, we've all got people we work with or whatever. We're like, oh, I know so-and-so. Perfect example is I know there are certain nights I go to the gym where I'd like to anti-stalk because I know certain somebody shows up and they're always looking to just make everybody uncomfortable and, most importantly, look to cause a scene. So I'm starting to anti-stalk so I know when not to go there. Anti-stalker is your urban word of the day.
Thank you for saying that in dated urban slang so that I'll understand you. That there was the urban word of the day. We damn stretched your cranium.
Supporters point to emerging research touting the medical benefits of mushrooms, saying they can be effective in treating depression and other mental health issues. Last year, the FDA seemed to agree, giving it a special designation to speed up the testing process. Critics, though, say not enough research has been done on the long-term effects. The vote, though, extremely close. The margin was fewer than just 2,000 votes.
So they legalized the decriminalization of mushrooms, meaning you can't buy mushrooms, you can't sell mushrooms, but if you have mushrooms that are magical, right? Like H.R. Puffin stuff, right? They had magical mushrooms because there's no way that guy's running around an island and he's talking to a flute without being a little bit high. But if you get pulled over and you got magic mushrooms and you're not impaired, you're not going to be in trouble. And this is how Denver started the push for legalizing marijuana. It took several years to get there, but they're doing it in a way that essentially is the difference between putting a frog in cold water and then turning the heat up as opposed to throwing it in hot water, which is slowly but surely, one bite at a time. And I wouldn't be surprised. I'm telling you, something else is going to happen next. And I'm telling you, it's prostitution. That's what I heard. 323-538-2423. At Chad Benson Show is your Twitter. You can tweet at us. Uber going public. And the battle is on. One person said something I said yesterday. She's getting hammered for it. Talk about that. Plus, Trump taking on something that needs to be taken on, and we can all get behind him. Right, left, black, white, green, orange. Chad Benson Show.
The Chad Benson Show.
Independent thoughts, independent life. This is Chad Benson.
The Republican Party, I have to say this, is really very much becoming the party of healthcare. You see what we're doing. We're determined to end, surprise, medical billing.
I like that. Sometimes you can't get a law sorted out, right? Because there's too much partisanship. There's too much money that's flying in. So both parties will put up their roadblocks. Then with inside the parties, you have their own little cliques, right? Their own little caucuses doing their own little things. You got the cool kids here. You got the preppies over here. You got the hippies over here. Over here, you got the woke. It's hard, right? But this is something they should all want to get behind. ACA, Obamacare, single parent, whatever it is, right? Surprise medical bills. Surprise medical bills. Billing is important. Details are in the numbers. Today, Trump talked about that, and I will tell you this. This right here is go through your receipt, right? How many times you do? You go through your receipt. Your medical bill. You're like, well, what's this? It cost how much? What about this? I don't even know what the hell this is.
Surprise billings, which has been a tremendous problem in this country, has left some patients with thousands of dollars of unexpected and unjustified charges for services they did not know anything about.
Yeah. Not only did they not know about, they're like, look, if I would have known you were going to charge me $5 million for aspirin, I'd have brought my own and then sold them to everybody else. It's nuts. It is. And I like this. This is one of those little things you can do, like at the border, right? The fight is on how many people are pouring across the border. So many people. People are frustrated. People are now, we're now at the point where even the left, not the media so much, but the left, people on the left are like, look, we got to do something here. There's some, and I'm not talking about politicians, I'm talking about former politicians who can actually speak up. People who were in administrations before this who are saying, all right, we got problems. It needs 60 minutes. There's problem. We realize that. So we're not going to do anything. We're not going to do anything real because everybody's going to want a little something and nobody's willing to give anything. And it's just ridiculous. And there's still too much money and too much importance when it comes to an actual fix. So president can go and do what? The fair and credible hearing. The first one you get sometimes takes 2, 3, 4, 5 years, depending on where you are, before you ever get to the chance where you see a judge. So through administration signatures, he can make it so the Border Patrol agents go and train and they could give that first one, which will speed up the process when it comes to what? Whether or not they can be here for amnesty, which means after 10 days, 2 weeks, I'm sure that will stretch out over time because we're still so far backed up, but it'll speed up the process big time and it'll be a deterrent. Big time. This is one of those things. Let's fix billing. Let's make it transparent. Let's do it. Let's absolutely figure out how we can make things transparent. I want to know why this costs so much. I want to know what this is. I think this is one of the... Could you... I mean, think about this. What if you went... I mean, here's a perfect example of the craziness of... If you go to a dinner, right? It's you and your wife and your kids, and you look at the bill, and you notice that the bill is completely off. You complain right away. Hey, wait a minute! I didn't get these. We didn't have any alcohol. There's like 3 of us here. It shouldn't be $80 or $100. Oh my God! Sorry about that. You know, man. But it's easy. It's simple. It's transparent. Not so with medical billing.
This must end. We're going to hold insurance companies and hospitals totally accountable.
I would love that. I would. And if you're going to be serious about doing things, right? It's like with the tax thing we talked about yesterday. If you're going to be serious and say, oh, we're going to tax the rich, you don't even have to raise taxes. If you're serious, just change the codes. Change the codes that they benefit from. You know you're not going to do that. So really what you're doing is you're just talking a good game. But changing the codes would go further than raising taxes. You could tax them all at 25%. Everybody that makes over $100,000 or everybody makes over $1 million, and you could just keep it there and you could take away a good portion of the codes, not everything, but a good portion of those things that they benefit from tremendously, and it would change everything. But you don't have the cojones to do it. You talk a good game, but that's just it. It's talk.
We're going to be announcing something, I think, over the next 2 weeks that's going to bring transparency to all of it. And I think, in a way, it's going to be as important as a health care bill.
Yeah, it very well could. Because let's be real. When it comes to the health care bill, really what we're talking here is affordability, right? That's a lot of what we're talking about. Yes, and having a card, having insurance doesn't mean you're guaranteed a better, more responsive, more caring, more time with your doctor or healthcare provider, as much as you'd want that, and as much as a lot of people want that. Well, hell yeah, we'd all love that. Who wouldn't love that? When we're talking about a health care bill, in a lot of ways, what we're really talking about is affordability. And if this could be one of those things that can really start to chop things down, it's a win, kid. I'm all over it.
Uber is hoping to accelerate into the black by going public and finalizing its initial stock prices later today. About a month ago, the ride-sharing service said it planned to offer shares at $44 to $50. Analysts say that price is on the conservative side and that the company may be trying to avoid the volatility that competitor Lyft has had since it went public. The company will begin trading on Friday under the ticker symbol, what else? Uber.
Uber. And of course, yesterday they're out screaming, no, greed, bomb, or whatever it was they were saying. They were saying a bunch of stuff. Because Uber went on strike. They're all pissed off and they're angry and they want more money and they want this, that, and the other. It's now become a political thing, right? It's now become political. So Tommy Lauren, you know who she is? Great looking lady, youngster. She's like 24, 25. I don't know. She weighs 300 pounds. We're not paying attention. Stop being truthful. Can I get an amen, Phil?
Amen.
Thank you very much on that. So she tweets out yesterday, at Uber, at Lyft strikers. You already get to go to work in your PJs and half the cars reek of body odor. So if you can't support a family on 5 on a ride-sharing app driving income, sorry, that's not Uber's problem. The platform was never designed to turn you into millionaires. Yeah. And everybody took off on her, just hammered her, just destroyed her, just absolutely throttled her for saying that. I have been in a lot of Uber cars. Have I been in some smelly ones? I have been in a few. Is it always the person that I'm with that's smelly? No, sometimes the car itself is, it's not. I've been in a lot of cabs that stank. But she's right. It was never designed for you to get wealthy. It was never designed for you to raise a family of 4 or 5, 10, 12, 1. And I got several texts yesterday from Uber and Lyft drivers, some going, where's the strike? We didn't have it here. And others saying, I didn't get into this for anything other than to pick and choose my time. Or a lot of them said, this was a supplemental thing. Meant that I can make some extra dollars here or there. This was never supposed to be. Most of those Uber drivers and Lyft drivers that are out complaining, most of them are taxi drivers, cab drivers, who are in places where they've had their ass handed to them by Uber, by Lyft, because they came in and they created competition. And because of that competition, they saw their fares disappear and dwindle because there was competition and they weren't the only game in town. And so they've had to, and many of you listening, you know this. You've gotten in and you strike up a conversation and how many of them were like, well, I used to be a cab driver, used to be a taxi driver. I used to be this, I used to be that. And I'm, used to be a driver for this, used to be a driver for that, but now this is just, if it, kicked our butts, so this is what I'm doing now. And I've had very few people complain and say they're awful. But of course you can't say something like that because you're Tommy Lauren. So people hammered her. One person says, you absolutely would have owned slaves. Another person says, this is easily the dumbest take I've heard on the at Uber, at Lyft strike. Oh, my God, people. And, of course, some people are not very nice at all. Oh, those were the nice ones. Those are the ones you could repeat out loud. It's just amazing. Because I said yesterday, what did I say? It's like, this isn't for you. This wasn't for you. It's like people get a job at McDonald's. The job at McDonald's is not meant for you to raise a family on. It is meant for you and many people to have their first job, to work part-time to supplement something. And if you're there, maybe thinking you'd like to make it a career, that's one thing. But it was never meant for, hey, guess what? I'm going to raise a family of 4 on this. It wasn't meant for that. It wasn't. It's crazy. It's so nuts. I am telling you, I sit back and I think to myself, what is, really, that's what you think? And I'm getting text message now. Yeah, Chad, you're right. It's my supplemental job. And even remember when the commercials came out when they were starting to pimp Uber? It was always what? Hey, it's a side gig. It's a side hustle. And then people do it for, 40, 50, 60 hours a week. Or they say, I set a goal for $300 a day or $200 a day, and I hit that goal. It could be in 4 hours. It could be in 12 hours, but I go and hit my goal. And if you want to do it full time, it is what you make of it. But it was never meant to be anything other than that. And sure in the hell wasn't meant for other people to get rich on. 323-538-2423 at Chad Benson Show is your Twitter. You can tweet at us. One of the other things that's going on out there that I do find to be interesting, and it is an interesting thing. And remember, the road to hell is paved with what? Good intentions.
Before a court decision in the 1980s, states could limit how much interest rates credit card companies charged. Now rates have soared past 20% for many Americans with low credit scores.
The more desperate you are, the higher the interest rates are.
Senator Bernie Sanders wants to limit credit interest rates to 15% or less. Banks say doing that will deny the higher credit risk Americans any access to credit.
See, there's always something, right? Because it sounds great. Because they're usury rates. Like I said, you can go down the street, and the guy's going to run you 15%. He's going to hand you a bag full of cash. You got to pay him back. They're going to break your legs if you don't, kind of thing. Sometimes a little bit higher, maybe 20%. But some of these credit cards charge 22%. That's why you're paying stuff off. You bought a dinner 6 months ago. You're still paying it off. But he's like, the more desperate you are. Well, remember, these are for people who have bad credit. So their credit worthiness isn't very good. So you're loaning people money who may not, and based usually on their past history, will not pay back some or all of what you're loaning them. So you have to charge some of those things. It's frustrating. It is. And I get it for people. But at the same time, who else is doing it? And what will happen is right, because you know what they'll do, just like they did when they said, okay, now we can't loan all these people who money for houses with $12 an hour jobs and subpar credit. We can't do that anymore. What ends up happening? Well, then it's out of reach for other people. You can't have it both ways. 323-538-2423. At Chad Benson Show is your Twitter. You can tweet at us. Those were lots of guns. Talk about that. And gas prices. Where are you going? Chad Benson Show.
No fake outrage here. Just the real thing. The Chad Benson Show.
One of the LAPD lieutenants said that this is more weaponry that he's seen in one place in his 31-year career. They found ammunition, guns, rifles, some dating as far back as the Civil War, some 50 years old, many customized. A search warrant was issued after somebody tipped off law enforcement that there was someone manufacturing and selling guns from inside the home. Police say they found at least 1,000 weapons inside.
Yeah, 1,000 weapons, a lot of weapons inside the home. 57-year-old man was arrested. He's out on $50,000 bail already. But wow, that's a lot. And we got a picture on Facebook and the Twitter. Check it out. It's Cory Booker's nightmare.
I've never seen so many weapons in my career of 31 years. Such a big arsenal like this in the residence in this type of neighborhood is kind of astounding.
Yeah, Holmby Hills, very, 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 very nice neighborhood. Mansion. Nice. Living nice. Don't know if he owns it, rents it, what the deal is, but he was loaded for bear.
Ammunition was piled up in several parts of the rooms. Weapons were laid out on the floor. Weapons were stashed in some parts of the rooms. They were just all over, on top of various boxes of other items and household items and sinks and stuff like that. It was just very cluttered.
Yeah, it was like that TV show, right? Where they go over there and they have all that, like, people are just living in filth, florget and filth, and they can't get rid of anything. It was like that, but with guns. It was that bad. So, don't know. I saw some of the guns. They're laid out, but some of them are they're just regular guns. You've got your Glocks and you've got, just modern revolvers and guns. And then you've got some old style guns, and you've literally got some old Western guns, some old 6-shooters. So it's and just the ammo. Whew, crazy.
GasBuddy.com. See GasBuddy. Your petroleum analyst Patrick DeHaan says nationwide they've seen the highest seasonal rise in gas prices dating back to 2011.
Refinery maintenance or unexpected outages have contributed to
gas prices soaring across most of the country.
But he says the maintenance is wrapping up and prices should start decreasing very soon. He says they're keeping an eye on U.S.-China trade talks, which could also have a major impact on the price of oil.
Yeah, and apparently today Trump got himself a nice letter, a love letter from China. Xi Jinping sends a love letter. But it is, you feel it. And it's the little trickle-down side of stuff with gas prices. Costs more to ship. Those trucks that are on the road, they're being charged more for gas, which is indeed being passed on to the consumer because they're charging the people who are transport, hey, can you take my point A to point B? Well, they're watching all that. That comes and trickles down to us on top of what it costs to fill up our cars. So there's little things. And if money's tight, you feel that. Right? If money is tight, you feel that. You're like, why is this cost an extra 5 cents? Why is this an extra 7 cents? And wow, look how expensive these things are nowadays. Well, there's a reason for that. Not just, hey, wow, gas has gone through the roof. 323-538-2423 at Chad Benson Show. Your Twitter, you tweet at us. Instagram as well. We do that. We do the gram. Check out the Facebook, the Chad Benson Show. It is that there aforementioned Chad Benson Show.
This is the Chad Benson Show. Independent thoughts, independent life. This is Chad Benson.
Course to take today to move a contempt citation against the Attorney General of the United States. Attorney General Barr, having proved himself to be the personal attorney to President Trump rather than the Attorney General of the United States, by misleading the public as to the contents of the Mueller report and turning the entire Department of Justice into an instrument of Trump personally rather than an instrument of justice and a representative of the United States.
Oh, that right there is the Nadler. The Nadler. Don't saddle the Nadler. Interesting. Very. Because he's just out there doing what he does, which is taking on the president because he is resisting the president's words today.
Guys like Jerry Nadler, who I fought for many years, successfully, I might add, back in New York in Manhattan. He was a Manhattan congressman. I beat him all the time. And I come to Washington, and now I have to beat him again.
Oh. And what are they fighting over again? I honestly, God, I forgot. All I know is that they're fighting hard, and it's got to be vitally important because I hear this all the time.
We've talked for a long time about approaching a constitutional crisis. We are now in it.
You keep using the word. I don't think it means what you think it means.
So over it. They're doing stuff, people, so get ready for it. That's all I'm saying. They're fighting. They're doing stuff. I said earlier, think about this for a second. I want you guys to soak this up. I believe in the last year that Kim Kardashian has done more to push something through with the criminal reform bill than Congress has done. Soak that up for a second. Let that breathe, right? That's just understand that. Just let that soak itself in. Other stuff happening. Other stuff needs to be addressed. It's not being addressed, but it needs to. Things like border security, which we know is just out of control right now, and there is a lack of security through no fault of the people. They're doing a fine job on the border. They're busting their ass. But there's only so much they can do, and the system's broken, and they can only do what they can do. You've got that going on. Then you've got situations like, I don't know, Iran,
That aircraft carrier has gone through the Suez Canal and is now in the Red Sea. And that strike group was potentially being sent to the Middle East as a response to deter Iran because of threats the U.S. intelligence had perceived that either Iran or its proxies were planning attacks against U.S. forces in the Middle East. That is the highest tensions that we've seen between the United States and Iran in quite some time.
Yeah, that's like not good. If somebody asked me, how close are we to going to war? I said, well, look, we're not going to go to nuclear war because nobody wants to get into that game because everybody loses. So that's not going to happen. Could there be tensions that could rise and see us potentially move a little further into something? Yeah. Could that be North Korea? The possibility is there because he's also saber-rattling.
Kim Jong-un made a commitment to President Trump that he would not launch ICBMs. Those are the intercontinental ballistic missiles that could potentially reach the United States. And he also said he would not carry out any more nuclear tests. Well, these missiles that were fired today, they are ballistic missiles, and they're short range, and they were fired from the western part of North Korea all the way towards the Sea of Japan. But they don't meet those parameters. So, in effect, Kim Jong-un is not breaking his pact with President Trump, but they are definitely a sign that North Korea is trying to get its message across the United States.
What message is that? Just curious. Well, the message is you're not paying attention anymore. We started something. We thought we were getting somewhere. I'm never giving up my nuclear arsenal. So, but you were going to give me something. He needs sanctions lifted. His people are going to starve. 11 ounces. That's what they're saying. 11 ounces is what they're going to live on a day. The average person over there, because the harvest was so bad. 11 ounces. Saber rattling, Iran, Venezuela, and then, of course, you've got China and the big trade thing going down.
Senior Trump administration officials will begin meetings with senior Chinese officials tonight in Washington. President Trump has threatened to raise tariffs from 10 to 25% on $200 billion of Chinese goods by the end of the week because he says trade talks with China are going too slowly. China says it will retaliate if the president moves forward with that threat, but didn't offer specifics. Economists warn that an escalation in this trade tit for tat will rattle markets and could hurt the U.S. economy.
Yeah, possibility is very real there. Very, very real. How close are we to getting a deal done? That is a very good question. Trump talked a bit about that today.
The vice premier is coming here today. We were getting very close to a deal. Then they started to renegotiate the deal. We can't have that. We can't have that.
You know what? He's right. They got into it where they think that they could go toe-to-toe. Look, their economy's coming on, but make no bones about it. Our economy's still stronger. We're still bigger. They need us more than we need them. Second thing is, militarily, we're still far, far, far away from them. They thought they could get into it with us, and they realized that they were wrong. They have a stagnant economy. They're struggling. And whether you like Trump, hate Trump, all of these things, one thing about the art of the deal, the art of the comeback, and all of those things that he's absolutely correct on is sometimes you got to know when to walk away. They thought they had a deal, and then they came back and they said, hey, you know what? This is the new deal. And Trump said,
I have no idea what's going to happen. I did get last night a very beautiful letter from President Xi. Let's work together. Let's see if we can get something done.
We'll find out. We will find out if that's going to happen. But I think Trump also realizes, too, this is one of those things where they're blinking because he tried to cancel this, remember? And then the vice premier, basically the second in charge, hops on a plane and brings over his people because they don't want it canceled, which if you are a negotiator, you understand now that card that you've held is a winning card. So now you can go back in because you tried to change the parameters of all this. You tried to flip the switch. Well, guess what? Not going to happen. Now we have the upper hand. So we'll see. It's going to be very interesting. 323-538-2423. At Chad Benson Show is your Twitter. You can tweet at us. Facebook. Great article today about Facebook, an opinion piece done by a guy named Chris Hughes in the New York Times.
Chris Hughes was a Harvard classmate of Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg, and he came up with the idea alongside his friend, who he describes as a good person. Chris Hughes also says it's time to break up Facebook. Hughes writes in a New York Times piece that as the head of Facebook, WhatsApp, and Instagram, Zuckerberg's control on 3/4 of the world's communications platforms is staggering. As head of the company, Hughes writes, Mark may never have a boss, but he needs to have some check on his power. He says it's time for the government to regulate the company and make it more accountable to the American people.
Yeah, and one of the things he talked about is the fact that they own Instagram, they own WhatsApp, they own Facebook. That right there, 3 billion people a day. 3 billion. Almost 85 cents of every dollar spent on social media goes to who? Facebook. And he doesn't have a boss. They're a public company. He owns 60% still. So while there's a board, he is the end all to be all. Period, case closed. He said and kind of came up with some things that may help alleviate this. He's got a 2-step plan on what should be done.
First, the Facebook empire needs to be broken up. America's regulated corporate empires before, and we can do it again. This isn't unprecedented. And surprisingly, it often boosts the value of these companies in the long run. Federal Trade Commission can force Facebook to unwind its acquisitions of WhatsApp and Instagram. Then we'll see real competition around social media and digital messaging. Breaking up Facebook isn't a punishment for its economic success. It's a way to guarantee that other new companies can compete.
Which I absolutely understand what he's saying there. Look, monopolies are one thing, right? But when you have cronyism monopolies like you have here, which is what we've got now, where for all intents and purposes, it's so tough to get in because the lobbying they are doing are for certain things to make it tougher for other companies to evolve and move forward. And the other thing is, the only monopoly I see that's really dangerous is Silicon Valley itself. Because of its mindset, because of its groupthink, because it's also very closed off from the rest of the real world. That, to me, is a scarier thing. He wants more regulation. He wants the government to come in and say, hey, let's get some real rules here when it comes to things like free speech. So you just don't have an algorithm out there saying this is or isn't. And I think that's kind of a point towards, that's where the right gets upset, is because there doesn't seem to be, you've got left-leaning people programming algorithms that are going to be left-leaning algorithms saying that this is hate speech. And lo and behold, what do you get? You get people over here on the right upset because they're like, hey, these people over here aren't held to the same standards. Everybody just wants transparency when it comes to that. And what are the rules? So I know what they are. He also went on to say this.
I don't think Mark's a bad guy. And I've made this decision to speak out because I feel a sense of responsibility for what Facebook has become. And to be honest, I'm angry that Mark's obsession with growth led him to sacrifice security for clicks. I think we all want to live in a country where David can take on Goliath, where a kid with a smart idea in a dorm room can start a billion-dollar company. We've strayed from that ideal, and breaking up and regulating Facebook will help put us back on that path.
And I'm not a big regulation guy, but know this, Silicon Valley, Alphabet Corp, Facebook, and all of them, they're the biggest lobbyists that are out there. They're going out there throwing up money. And and when they scream, we need more regulation, a lot of what they're saying is the regulation that we need is only going to benefit us because we are first movers. We have a ton of money. We can absorb the regulation into our business in ways that newer companies are going to have a tough time doing. So if you put so many hurdles in front of David before he even ever has a chance to get to Goliath, a lot of times he's got to go through fire, then he's got to fight a lion, and then he's got to go swim through the sea, and and it's full of man-eating sharks, and then by the time he may never get there. And that's an issue. 323-538-2423 at Chad Benson Show is your Twitter. Tweet at us. Kid goes back to school. We'll talk about that. And, oh, by the way, robocalls, I think we can all agree they drive us all crazy. Chad Benson Show.
You go, boy.
This isn't about right or left. This is just about right and wrong.
Right you are, Chad. The Chad Benson Show.
Hi,
High school basketball player Jerome Kunkel's been banned from class and extracurricular activities since February. There was a chickenpox outbreak at his school, and he refused to get vaccinated because of his religious beliefs. Eventually, he did get the chickenpox, and now he's considered immune and therefore has been allowed to return. Chris Weist is his attorney.
We were absolutely not surprised by that, and if you paid attention to the court hearing, we told the court that's exactly what was going to happen.
The Northern Kentucky Health Department released a statement criticizing Weist for downplaying the dangers of chickenpox.
Well, now he gets to go back, and he got the chickenpox. So, and if that's your religion, that's what you want to do. You know, there's a mom scathing article op-ed the other day about the fact that her 5-month-old has the measles, and we're hearing more and more of these. And while it's the measles now, it's the what's next that could be scary. And it's not about, well, if you got a shot, you should be fine. It's the other people that you don't see. Grandma and grandpa, they're going through something. They've got a compromised immune system, right? Somebody who's getting treated for a disease, compromised immune system. Little kids, babies who can't be immunized. Those are the things. But people just don't care. And some people, it's religious, and I get that. This guy stayed home from school, but he still got it. And for others, it's this, this disdain for big pharma and a lot of other things like that. And you just sit back and you go, all right, well, it is what it is. But when you, and I say it all the time and I'll continue to say it, when your freedoms impinge and stomp upon other people's freedoms, there's where I have a problem. 323-538-2423 at Chad Benson Show's your Twitter. Here's something we can all agree with.
Congress is getting closer to taking new steps to criminalize robocalls.
Yes. Congress shares all of the concerns and annoyances that all of us do as we get flooded with more and more robocalls. Congress is looking to expand the statute of limitations potentially for robocalling offenses. And the biggest thing is they are extremely unhappy with the amount of fines that have been levied on robocallers with the amount of fines that have been actually collected. It's like $207 million to $7,000, which Paul...
Can we all agree? Today I'm up to, God, I don't know, just 7. Like before noon, I had a bunch. And how many of them? How many of you out there, producer Phil and I talk about all the time, get a phone call from your phone. You're like, whoa, it's nuts. It is crazy. How many of you out there? Same thing. And the text messages, I get a ton of those as well. That's starting to happen. It's time to go away. And as we approach the season that is election time, those are only going to grow.
And it really shows that kind of these standard fining and waiting and for that money to come in is really not working either as a deterrent or clearly as an enforcement practice. And so we may be seeing more criminal prosecutions of these companies going forward. A lot of them are just outright scams. Obvious that a fraud would be something that would be law enforcement would be interested in rather than simply a simple penalty.
Yeah, and the scams, we've talked a bit about those. You get a weird, was it 222 number or whatever the calls. Don't call it back. Stay away. They're going to hit you with an outrageous fee on your thing. But this is something, both sides of the aisle, black, white, gay, straight, tall, thin, fat, short, man, woman, non-identifying gender, right, left, can all get behind, and our politicians should all be behind, and it should be completely bipartisan.
I think some of this stuff has broad bipartisan support, which, is sort of rare these days. And so I'm sort of hopeful about that. Already we've seen in the Senate a bill which would essentially mandate this private sector solution to caller ID authentication. So I think that's something that may happen as well in the House. Lawmakers seem to have an appetite for it.
But will they get it done? I think they will at some point in time. But remember that even if they get this done, that a lot of this stuff is offshore, out of the country, so it's still beyond the reach of what we're, hoping to have happen. And with the election coming up, these are one of the things where they're allowed to call you as much as they want. They're allowed to text you as much as they want. As annoying as it is, they're allowed to do that. So be prepared, because it is going to be flooding you. 323-538-2423 at Chad Benson Show is your Twitter. The art of the deal, the art of the comeback. Trump Let's talk about New York real estate. Let's talk about what it was really like. Let's talk about, was it the smart thing that he did? We got a guy that actually does this for a living, and he does it in New York. He joins us straight ahead. Chad Benson Show.
The Chad Benson Show.
Independent thoughts, independent life. This is Chad Benson.
It is, it's all that anybody talked about yesterday in between going after Barr. It was Trump's a loser and he's a failure. And after a while, I'm just like, is he really? Is it really that? Or is there a lot of games that are being played in the world of stuff that's on paper rather than stuff that's in your account? Let's go to somebody who actually knows and understands that marketplace better than most of us. He is this guy's got it going on, right? He's the CEO of economicpolicyproject.org. And by the way, you can check it out as one of the managing partners at kpropertygroup.com. He is a person who gets it. Commercial real estate investor in New York City, and great crowd. Appreciate you joining us today. It's interesting because you read all this stuff. When you see this stuff break down and take the politics out of it, just the craziness of it, do you sit there and just go, yeah, that's par for the course, and especially in that day and age?
Look, by the way, thank you for having me on your show. From 1985 to 1995, they used to have an expression in New York City called "staying alive to 95." It was an era of very high murder rates in New York City. It was a little bit better than that show The Deuce in Times Square. Companies were moving out of Wall Street, going to New Jersey, Connecticut, even some of them to other states further away. You had tremendous tax issues and regulations that were taken away from developers. And it was just a different time. Coming off of David Dinkins, and after he had one term, and then they kind of brought on Giuliani, who then helped out with a bunch of the tax incentives to spur development back into New York City. It was definitely a rough time, to do business and be a real estate developer in New York City. I mean, if you look at it from, 1985, 1986, most developers who actually bought buildings in New York City either got foreclosed on or had to restructure their buildings, or they built spec. And then when the crash happened in 97 and 98, a lot of people, a lot of companies lost their businesses. And at the time, if you remember, in the late 80s, early 90s, everybody thought that, Japan was going to take over New York, and everybody thought that China was going to take over New York the last few years as well. So certainly there's some similarities, but it was definitely a different place back then than today.
Talking to Greg Kraut, managing partner of K Property Group, Park Avenue in New York City, a commercial real estate investment firm, somebody who understands it. You look at all of this stuff and you talk about it. Back then, it was you staying alive till 95, just trying to get through the whole thing. And there wasn't a lot of incentives. But, people talk about all the money. Okay, he did this, he carried this. That's just normal stuff that you do in a situation like that. Whether the times are good or bad, you're going to look for places where tax codes are such that you can take advantages of certain things.
Sure. One of the most valuable special benefits in the tax code is depreciation, which lets owners of commercial real estate write down the cost of their buildings. Every developer uses it. It's common practice. And back then, developers were entitled to massive write-offs and depreciation. And in almost all cases, from what I've been told, because I was a little bit younger back then, would show losses and tax losses, whether it's to the government or to their lenders.
That's nuts. I mean, the people just freak out. They see this thing, but you understand. You live in a world of you're in New York City. Obviously, I'm sure at some point in time you probably had run-ins with the Trump organizations, but we live in this world of craziness when it comes to the news media, and they see this and they think, well, Trump's a giant loser. He even talked about the fact that in those days he was billions of dollars in debt and he fought his way back. And I'm sure you've seen that where people one year are down and out, and within 2 or 3 years they're back up, high on the hog and riding high.
New York is one of those markets that as long as you have the right long-term capital partners, and you're in New York and you're specializing in New York City and you know how things work, it either could be a harrowing place to do business or a great place to do business. But to go back to your original question, what I find pretty interesting is when the media talks about sort of Trump and his real estate. It really wasn't his real estate where most of the losses were in. The major losses, more than 80% of the losses were in, when he bought the shuttle, the airline shuttle, when he bought the New Jersey Generals, right? When he had those issues with those casinos, right? So a lot of the stuff really wasn't necessarily in the bread and butter of real estate per se. Is when you sort of go out of your comfort zone, right? And you go out of sort of your core business and try to become a corporate raider, which he did for a while, if you recall.
Yeah. He tried a lot of different things, and that didn't. People stopped believing that he was a corporate raider, and they just thought, it is what it is. When you're state bread and butter like him, I mean, give people a sense of how big Trump is out there. I mean, you guys, UK Property Group, you guys got what, some $500 million that you guys have as far as holdings and stuff. But give a sense of like Trump's size of holdings that he may have, because for a lot of us, we think of Trump Towers, we think of Mar-a-Lago, we have no idea what else he has because it's just kind of a thing that's out there.
Well, look, in New York City in the last probably 15, 20 years, he hasn't been very active in the commercial real estate space. We specialize in buying value-add office buildings, basically taking a underperforming office building, renovating it, leasing it, and then selling it, right? So that's sort of our bread and butter, catering to sort of the mid-market office tenant, right? But I will tell you, about 20 years ago, he bought a building called 40 Wall Street, downtown on Wall Street, which is probably one of those genius moves for $1. There were significant taxes. It was on a ground lease. So there were some major issues with it, and he believed in Wall Street, and now that building is a tremendous success, which you would be able to sell for, 1,000% more than he bought it for. And he also owns 725 Fifth Avenue, which is obviously Trump Tower, which has some office space there as well. But besides those two buildings, most of it is either real estate, residential that he owns, or, the last several years, he's just been a media and licensing business more than anything, and building his golf courses, around the world, from what I've been told.
Talking to Greg Kraut, he's managing partner of K Property Group. You can check it out, kpropertygroup.com. You got a little bit under holdings out there as well. You look at somebody like Trump, and you look at a lot of other developers. One of the things I always say, it's New York. There's codes, there's wackiness, there's some different underbellies that we wouldn't see elsewhere potentially. If you're building a house or a building in Iowa that you may not see in New York, is it still that way? Through the 80s, I'm sure you were having to deal with shady people, Trump and a lot of other developers were. Is it still that way?
Well, look, it's not like the government makes it easy in New York or the Northeast to do business with a lot of regulations. But at the end of the day, if you have good people in your organization and you know how to work with whether it's the Department of Buildings or the Landmark Preservation Commission, it's a daunting place to be part of and to work in. But also, it rewards you for making bold moves as well. Again, people forget that Manhattan is an island, right? And so even now, there are certain areas, like I'll give you an example, with this, he created this opportunity zone world where there are several areas within Manhattan and in the New York City area that are going to benefit to put in money to help out certain underperforming areas, which really spur the economy. And you have to keep that money in for 10 years. And after 10 years, you don't pay capital gains on that capital. This is something he talked about, if you recall, like 25 years ago, when he said the government should do more to really help business rather than to hurt business. So I think that's one thing that he's certainly done right, and he's definitely spurred the real estate market to help areas that were underperforming that need to have a boost of capital, because most developers don't think in 10-year tranches, right? They think in 3, 4, 5-year periods, right? So when you have to put your money for 10 years, which is good for some of these areas where you wouldn't necessarily have investment in previously.
This is very interesting. You talk about like 10-year periods, and you talk about, capitalization and capital. You talked about it a little bit earlier. One of the things that's interesting is, and that's a lot of people, especially in the world of politics, that want to turn this into craziness. They want to know, okay, who loaned Trump money? Because a lot of developers throughout the 80s, 90s, and even certain times, they've overreached, and on paper, they're paper millionaires and billionaires, but they're cash poor, so they look for money elsewhere. And I'm sure that has a lot to do with the taxes as well. They're looking around, they're saying, wow, they're taking billions of dollars, but it's all paper losses.
Well, listen, I think most developers don't put a significant amount of their money into it. Most developers today put, anywhere from 5 to maybe 20% into a deal, and they'll bring in a limited partner, usually either a private equity fund or an institutional equity source, whether it's a public pension, a private pension, and then they bring in the debt, which is a bank, right? So, most developers don't have a majority of their money into these transactions anyway. It's really other people's money.
Do you, other people's money, man, nothing's better than getting rich on other people's money. That's what I've always said. It's amazing that government always worries about other people's money because they believe it should be theirs. Last question. Appreciate you coming on.
That's correct.
One of the things.
By the way, I couldn't agree with you more.
One of these things, when I was in the investment world, when we would set up stuff and we'd raise money for certain things, we'd do everything under an umbrella, and then we do each project as a limited liability corporation. So it stands on its own. If it goes bust, it goes bust on its own. It's not the whole thing. Is that a way that a lot of people do it out there, like with, your company, K Property Group, and other things where, you hear, oh, Trump left everybody high and dry. And I'm like, well, was it the entire Trump organization, or did he have several partners and they tried to do something, it didn't go well, and it was on its own entity standing alone, as opposed to Trump did this?
Well, look, again, it all depends who your equity partners are. At our company, I can't tell you sort of our internal structure, but I can tell you for legal reasons, yes, you look to have certain shields for liability purposes in your company. So you don't cross companies. If I'm buying one building, it's not the same sort of a legal structure as I'm buying another property as well. But, to blame Trump, saying Trump let everybody out to dry, these are big boys, right? These are major banks, major institutions that lend him money, right? They have as much responsibility in this as he does.
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy. And a lot of times I think we forget that. And they're like, oh, he's just this evil guy. No, I think he's a business guy. And when he talked about it the other day, when he says, a lot of us were doing it. This was sport. I don't think people realize that because the average person doesn't understand what that was. But that was just the going thing that they were doing at that point in time. And if you look at today, Greg, the fact is if he was to do the same thing today, he could double his losses as far as his carryover. It's crazy, but it is the world that people don't quite understand because the numbers are so big, and how can one person do these kind of things? It's just what it is, and that's what big business does. Greg Kraut, managing partner of K Property Group. We appreciate you coming on today. Thanks so very much, man.
Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it anytime.
Thanks. At Chad Benson Show, Twitter, ChadBenson. It's just big business, man. I mean, look, is it ugly at times? Absolutely. It's absolutely ugly. And you heard it from a guy, right, who gets it, who understands it. But I love the fact that he also pointed out, look, when Trump had issues, it had nothing to do with real estate development and all to do. I remember when he bought the New Jersey Generals, and do you remember when he sued? Right? He sued the NFL. All of the USFL sued the NFL, and I think they got $4. I think that's what they got. They sued the NFL. They got $4. That cost a ton of money. And look at this for a second. Right? Here's a perfect example. Flash forward to this year when it comes to something. He spent a ton of money in the USFL. This year, the competitive league opened up, right? The Alliance of American Football. It lasted 6 games. They lost hundreds of millions of dollars, and they weren't even anywhere near what the USFL was trying to do back in the day. You can lose, and they did the same thing with the airlines. Talk about losing money. There is no win in airlines. You're going to lose money. That's it. It's crazy. It is. So yeah. Has Trump done some stuff in the past? I'm sure where you shake your head and you say, ooh. And at the same time, though, we sit here and we have no idea what the inner workings were for any of these things. Did he probably make some bad moves? Absolutely. Did he make some moves that we would look at and say, ugh, I didn't like that at all? Did he make some moves that were criminal? That I don't know. And especially not with the taxes. He didn't do any of that. But in the end, he's still here, and he's president. And you may hate it that he's president. You may despise that he's president, but he's still president. And when I see all this stuff talked about all the time, the only thing that comes to my mind is it's just you're out to embarrass him. You're not interested in anything other than that. 323-538-2423 at Chad Benson Show is your Twitter. You can tweet at us. Do love hearing from you. Check us out on the Instagram as well. It's the Chad Benson Show.
Running with scissors sounds great compared to this.
Say what?
So what's for dinner? Well, if you're Chef Virgilio Martinez, who owns Central, a restaurant in Peru, it's piranhas, one of his specialties. But customs agents pulled Martinez into an interrogation room at Los Angeles International Airport when they found he was carrying 40 frozen vacuum-sealed piranhas in a duffel bag. After 5 hours, the agents let Martinez through with the fish. He used them that night on a salad, and the following night he dried the piranha skins and served them inside the piranha heads. Martinez was featured in the 3rd season of the Netflix show Chef's Table.
Say what? Yuck is basically the best thing to describe that. Yuck. Just yuck. But if you think that's bad, kids, say what?
So typically every year in the United States, 1 person dies of the plague and 7 people get sick. Fever, abdominal pain, nausea, vomiting. If you get these symptoms and you're living in an area where it's known that the plague has been before, then you should go seek help from your doctor. We've done a great job of getting rid of the plague almost entirely in this country. Better hygiene goes a long way, but you can't entirely get rid of the bacteria. It's not just a Dark Ages bacteria, it's still with us.
What? People get the plague? Oh, yeah. By the way, the plague, if it was serious today, there would still be a bunch of people like Jenny McCarthy say, don't get vaccinated for it, if we could get vaccinated for it.
And most of the time, humans get it from a flea bite. Back when plague was rampant and there was no treatment for it, plague could get into people's blood and it could turn their limbs black. And that's where we get the term Black Death. When the plague struck the Roman Empire in the 6th century, it went on to kill 25 million people. Eventually, the plague wiped out 60% of Europe. Now, before there were antibiotics, the plague would kill between 66 and 93% of people who got it. Now, with antibiotics, that mortality rate goes down to about 16%.
Yeah. 16%. We'd still have people, I'm telling you, on it. No, don't take it. Don't do it. Don't do it. Don't get anybody. You could get autism. Chad, such a jerk. It's Big Pharma. They've put the plague out here so they can sell their stuff. I'm just kidding. A couple just died of the plague because they ate something they shouldn't have eaten. No, it wasn't Chipotle. God. I like Chipotle. 323-538-2423. At Chad Benson Show is your Twitter. You can tweet at me. Do love hearing from you. Saw a commercial there for Chipotle. They're like, hey, where's your microwaves? Like, we don't have them. Like, hey, where's your E. coli? Chad. Check us out on Facebook, Instagram. Skywriter. That's next. Chad Benson Show.
This is the Chad Benson Show. Independent thoughts, independent life. This is Chad Benson.
The early days of Facebook tell a classic American story of innovation and entrepreneurship. From our college dorm room, we started a little social network for our friends that exploded in popularity and connected the world. Mark's hustle in those early years made it possible for Facebook to dominate our rivals like Friendster, MySpace, Tumblr, and many others. These competitors made us better, and then we beat them out. This is how it's supposed to work in America. Hard work leads to economic success. You start a small business and compete on the merits to provide a better product.
That right there is Chris Hughes. Who is he? He was one of the original partners and a roommate of Zuckerberg. Is he worth what Zuckerberg's worth? No, has been there for a long time. But he did quite all right out of this. Very interesting. Wrote an op-ed piece today, and he's making all the rounds, talking about, it's in the New York Times, but talking about, hey, you know what? We got to break this thing up. This thing isn't good anymore. This isn't benefiting, and it's time that we make a move.
Today, nearly 3 billion people use Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp, and they're all owned and controlled by the same company. Of every dollar spent buying ads on social media, 84 cents goes to Facebook. It's now worth over $500 billion.
Think about that. $500 billion, a company that started in 2004. $500 billion. $500 billion. 84 cents of every buck spent. That's amazing. That's power. That's dominance. Now, we may differ, he and I think it is and I talked to producer Anthony about this, Facebook, Instagram, all of these things. It's the culture, which you can't break up a culture. But to me, Silicon Valley is more of a monopoly than just singularly Facebook and Instagram and WhatsApp. These things, the entire culture up there is a monopoly. It is cult-like and groupthink, and that is worrisome. It really is.
When a single company dominates any market, they become susceptible to abusing their power. Social networking is like most other American industries. There used to be plenty of healthy competition. But now, many industries are controlled by just one or two companies.
Which is so real. And what do we talk about? And this is crony capitalism. When you go and look now and see who, let me tell you something. Silicon Valley may be still very new and very young in its infancy as it continues to blossom and the power that it has. But they learned early on to have this kind of power, you must then take the money and power you have to the other place with power, which is D.C., so you can pretend like you're doing the right thing, learn how to lobby the right way, and learn how to discourage and make it harder for people to come into the zone to compete against you.
Well, when companies get too big, they get sloppy and careless. And that leads to things like poor privacy practices, enabling foreign actors to meddle in elections, the spread of violent rhetoric, fake news, and the unbounded drive to capture more of our data and attention. I often hear people say, I'm shutting down my Facebook account. Thank God for Instagram. Not realizing that Instagram is owned by Facebook. People are powerless in this situation because there's nowhere else to go.
And that's the big thing, right? And this is when I talk about the fact that there's a monopoly out there in Silicon Valley. And I'll tell you why. Let's just say you want to set up something that's going to allow people to have free speech. And you're like, look, I'm not going to regulate minus the advocation of violence. If you're advocating violence, you're going to be regulated. Outside of that, I'm going to give people the opportunity to have a platform, right? To go out and to social network, to talk about stuff, to debate, to argue, to all of those things. But once it becomes violent rhetoric, then it changes. But the minute you do, what's going to happen is you got a lot of people kicked off, right? You got the Laura Loomers of the world, and you've got the likes of Alex Jones and everybody else, and they're going to go there because there may be an opportunity for them to have another platform to talk. And then what ends up happening in the world is Silicon Valley says, well, we don't like that. So you can't take any form of payment because we deem you to be evil, bad, and alt-right. And so what ends up happening is you demonetize them. And that's not good. That to me is the monopoly right there. While they don't work essentially together, they don't work against each other as well, and they will move in the same directions, and that's what's scary. So then what do? That's the big question.
First, the Facebook empire needs to be broken up. America's regulated corporate empires before, and we can do it again. This isn't unprecedented. And surprisingly, it often boosts the value of these companies in the long run. Federal Trade Commission can force Facebook to unwind its acquisitions of WhatsApp and Instagram. Then we'll see real competition around social media and digital messaging. Breaking up Facebook isn't a punishment for its economic success. It's a way to guarantee that other new companies can compete.
Yeah. But if you come in as a new company today, it's such a different landscape, and there's so many games that have to be played. And if you're a person that has any kind of ideology that may be different, or, especially in a social media sense, how many of their small social media companies are out there that, boom, they'll just demonetize you from, Patreon to all of these other ones that are out there where, because they've kicked everybody else off, people are going there and guess what? Can't take payment anymore. PayPal says no. So-and-so says no. You can't do this. You can't. It's a struggle, right? And so to say, hey, let's break these things up. Let's come in here and regulate these things. There's something to be said for that. And I'm not a big regulation person. I'm not. I like less regulation, but I also like competition. And this is where you look at collusion and go, wow, they seem like they're all colluded. Again, they're not working. They're not fighting each other and working against each other. Right? And they're not working with each other, but they're definitely kind of wink, wink, nudging along. And they're huge, which is fine. Got no problem with that. And it's long ago, monopolies can be horrible things, and they can be, at times, interesting. And because of that, kerosene oil. There was a monopoly on kerosene oil. The price was extremely low because he never wanted anybody else. I think it was Rockefeller never wanted anybody else to come on in and take over the kerosene market, so he kept it low so he could dominate. But what did that do? Even though he was the only one who had it, what ended up happening? Oh, we came up with a light bulb. We have something brand new. Something else can come into the market. If you start, here's the beautiful thing. They talk about like beer companies in this, how, beer companies, really only a few companies make beer. Well, mass produce, but that's not, the reality is there's tons of beer companies out there. They get gobbled up. Yes, but you could start a beer company today and monetize it. If it's worth a damn, you may have a chance to go somewhere. It's not that way anymore. Silicon Valley, it doesn't work that way. It doesn't. And the thought of saying, hey, you got to get rid of Instagram and you got to get rid of WhatsApp. You can't have all three. It's kind of like the world I live in, radio. You can't just go in and buy 70 radio stations in one market. No, sometimes they'll trade and you'll have to divest and you'll have to give stuff up and go to marketplaces because you can only have so many in that area.
We also need a new government agency to protect Americans from the overreach of Facebook and other companies like it. Think about it. We don't trust airlines or pharmaceutical companies to regulate themselves, and we shouldn't trust social media companies either. We need basic privacy protections and the ability for people to move their data around as they please. Right now, Facebook makes free speech decisions on its own with little accountability. Instead, we need government to set guidelines, not Facebook employees in Menlo Park.
Yeah, I like that. And that's the frustration that the conservatives have with Facebook. And a lot of people, you guys get that, right? Oh, you guys are just so full of it. No, you understand that the people that are making up the algorithms lean in one direction, and they put the guidelines out there and keep to them. But what should be good for one side should be good for the other side. But it doesn't work that way.
I don't think Mark's a bad guy. And I've made this decision to speak out because I feel a sense of responsibility for what Facebook has become. And to be honest, I'm angry that Mark's obsession with growth led him to sacrifice security for clicks. I think we all want to live in a country where David can take on Goliath, where a kid with a smart idea in a dorm room can start a billion-dollar company. We've strayed from that ideal, and breaking up and regulating Facebook will help put us back on that path.
Yeah, We'll see. I don't know if it's going to happen anytime soon because, remember, they love to lobby. And they like lobbying and making sure there's tons of regulations because the more regulations there are, and they say, oh, the safety for everybody else, the reality is it's hard for David to fight Goliath if David has to go through so many things that he can't afford to do to get to the point where he gets to actually take on Goliath. 323-538-2423 at Chad Benson Show is your Twitter. You could tweet at us. Guess what's happening, kids? We did something today. We did something. We grabbed a ship.
The 17,000-ton bulk cargo carrier Wise Honest, federal prosecutors here said, has been used to support illicit shipments to and from North Korea. Its seizure marks the first time the U.S. has seized a North Korean cargo vessel for sanctions violations. On its last voyage a year ago, Wise Honest sailed toward Indonesia filled with coal, an export that the U.S. believes funds North Korea's nuclear and ballistic missile programs. The ship's papers falsely said the coal came from Russia, and its identification system had been switched off, concealing its location, course, and speed.
Yeah, so we grabbed that ship. It is getting a little bit more tense. He's playing a game right now. He's rattling his saber. He's pissed. He's angry. He wants the world to look at him. He is getting a little bit more desperate. And I'm sure there's pressure coming from China as well because the battle's going on and these tariffs that are potentially going on there aren't just, hey, we're throwing tariffs out there because this is a trade war. There's other things in this besides intellectual property and unfair trade. There's some other stuff behind this as well. And I'm sure this just isn't, look, they're not comfortable right now. And he's rattling that saber. And when you have what he just went through and they've had 3 years of not great weather and 3 years of really bad planting and harvesting. And this last one was bad. That shows you that, they may be desperate in a far more desperate situation. You see what sanctions can do. Look at what's going on in Iran right now. They're threatening to just pull the plug out of what's left of that thing with the Europeans because, hey, these sanctions are crushing us. 323-538-2423 at Chad Benson Show is your Twitter. You can tweet at us. Love hearing from you. Oh, yeah, it wouldn't be we should at least do this.
We've talked for a long time about approaching a constitutional crisis. We are now in it.
You keep using the word. I don't think it means what you think it means.
Yeah, I don't think so either. There's a constitutional crisis every 5 minutes with Trump. Do something. Right, fish or cut bait. We're all bored. 323-538-2423 at Chad Benson Show is your Twitter. Get a good night's sleep on the best sheets. They're called Giza cotton sheets, baby. Oh, yeah, Giza. One of the most incredible, best cotton you're ever going to find. Grown in a small area near the Mediterranean Sea. Super smooth, breathable. The best sheets around, super deep pockets, fit any bed. It's incredible. You're going to sleep like you're sleeping on $1 million cloud. It's that good. 100% machine washable and dryable. You will feel the difference. You will sleep the difference. These are more than just quality sheets. They're super high-end at not a high-end price. Get your Giza cotton sheets today. Call 800-983-4975 or go to MyPillow.com. Use promo code Benson. That's MyPillow.com, MyPillow.com, promo code Benson. Or call 800-983-4975, promo code Benson. Chad Benson Show.
Got that sniffling, sneezing, stuffy head thing going on? Time for your daily dose of Vitamin Chad.
GasBuddy.com senior petroleum analyst Patrick DeHaan says nationwide they've seen the highest seasonal rise in gas prices dating back to 2011.
Refinery maintenance or unexpected outages have contributed to gas prices soaring across most of the country.
But he says the maintenance is wrapping up and prices should start decreasing very soon. He says they're keeping an eye on U.S.-China trade talks, which could also have a major impact on the price of oil.
Oh, it's paying too much. Some weeks from California, I'm paying like $4.50, $4.20 down in San Diego. $4.20, man. Then I'm in Arizona and I'm paying $3 right now. But that's just too much. Talking to producer Phil, you're out there in Virginia. Phil, what are you paying? $2.60? $2.44. Ooh. I'll have a bit of that. I'll tell you that right now. That's the stuff right there. Like that right there, the impact that has on people. And think about this. Think about the trickle-down impact it has. Okay, so it costs you more to fill up your car. But it also costs you more at the grocery store because the stuff arriving there, it's costing them more to get it there. So there's that effect of it's not just your car. There's an impact across the board that is really not talked about, but it is definitely felt. 323-538-2423 at Chad Benson Show is your Twitter. Yesterday, we talked a bit about Uber and the drivers were on strike, and I had several Uber drivers say, this is like a supplemental job. This was never meant to be my job, and and I've got it's crazy. And some of them said, look, they're trying to unionize, they're trying to do all of this, and it's falling on deaf ears by a lot of people. But Uber did go public yesterday.
Uber is hoping to accelerate into the black by going public and finalizing its initial stock prices later today. About a month ago, the ride-sharing service said it planned to offer shares at $44 to $50. Analysts say that price is on the conservative side and that the company may be trying to avoid the volatility that competitor Lyft has had since it went public. The company will begin trading on Friday under the ticker symbol, what else? Uber.
Yeah, there you go. Pretty simple. So now regular people could start purchasing and doing stuff like that, because the people that get rich in stock world like this, the people that are first movers, people that the average person you can't get in on, you're not getting in at Uber at $2. You're not doing that because of the size of this, and you need to be a sophisticated investor. You have to be worth, several $1 million kind of thing where you can go and you're able to do that. You're not buying it, at preferred stock levels. You're just not. So, $44. To think about this, it's never made a penny. It continues to bleed money. It's never made a cent. It lost $1.8 billion last year. The year before that, it lost $2.2 billion. It's not making money. So they're hoping this will help in some way, shape, or form. They can raise money, do some other stuff with it. But still, it's crazy. That's paper money right there. You're paper rich. 323-538-2423 at Chad Benson Show is your Twitter. You tweet at us. Robocalls drive me crazy. Plus, a tribe in Arizona says, not here. And how will that affect immigration? Chad Benson Show.
The Chad Benson Show.
Independent thoughts, independent life. This is Chad Benson.
First and foremost hero, as far as I'm concerned, and his name is Riley Howard. And he took the fight to the assailant, and he unfortunately had to give his life to do so, but he saved lives doing so. You hide, you run, you shelter in place, you fight. And the last one is, if the other options aren't there, you fight.
That right there is Police Chief Kurt Putney talking about the UNC hero Riley Howe. Shootings could have been much worse at UNC if not for him. Just a few days ago, something similar happened in a school in Colorado.
Deputies arrived quickly, but before they did, a hero emerged. 18-year-old Kendrick Castillo rushed the shooter and saved countless student lives.
Kendrick lunged at him to try and subdue him. As soon as he said, "Don't you move," Kendrick lunged, giving all of us enough time to hide under our desks. And the shooter ended up shooting Kendrick.
Yeah. Not going down without a fight. A couple years ago, he was lambasted for this. And I just remember how they tore him apart. Every MSNBC, CNN, they all just tore him apart. Even some people questioned, "Oh, well, you're blaming the victims of the shooting for being shot, not the shooter himself." But do you guys remember Ben Carson?
Of course, if everybody attacks that gunman, he's not going to be able to kill everybody. But if you sit there and let him shoot you one by one, you're all going to be dead.
In a time of great stress like that, one might not know exactly what to do, and to judge them, to sound like you're judging them.
Not judging them at all, but, these incidents continue to occur. I doubt that this will be the last one. I want to plant the seed in people's minds so that if this happens again, they don't all get killed.
Is that what he did? Keep talking about was Flight 93, right? They had heard what was going on. They knew what was going to happen. And they thought to themselves, hey, you know what? I'm not going to allow this to happen. I'm not going to allow this to happen. No, no, no. I'm going to go down. I'm going to go down fighting. Yesterday, one of the survivors, a 12-year-old, Nate Holly, who goes to the STEM school, talked about that.
And then the siren came on, and our teacher, and somebody started cracking a joke, and the teacher told them to shut up, and then she had us hide behind her desk. And when the shooter got closer, she moved us into the closet. I was hiding in the corner, and they were right outside the door. I had my hand on the metal baseball bat, just in case, because I was going to go down fighting if I was going to go down.
You were going to go down fighting with a baseball bat. Nate, and again, how old are you?
I'm 12.
12.
And you felt like she wanted to say something. You were going to do that. Yeah. Well, Chad, you shouldn't. No. Police will tell you. At some point in time, man, you got to fight. They'll tell you that. Like, don't ever get in the car. Fight back. There's some point in time when you've got to fight back. And I think people realize that, and yesterday they turned it into a political thing, the vigil, and all the kids walked out. They were pissed and angry that it became this political thing, and they started chanting mental health, because what they realize is you got to fight back. You got a bad guy, or maybe a bad girl, right? We want to be gender neutral here, a bad person with a gun against people who don't have a gun. So at some point in time, you're waiting for that person that's good show up with a gun. If you can hide and you can never be found, great. It's awful that we have to talk about something like this. And then when you put the numbers out there, you keep it in perspective. But still, yeah. And I remember when Ben Carson said, man, he just got destroyed for that. Oh, wow. How dare you do so? That's the most incredible thing. That's ridiculous. How dare you do something like that? That's just stupid. They went off on, and I just laughed my ass off. I thought to myself, no, let me tell you something. What else are you going to do? Just curious, right? Hiding's great, and to have special doors where you can lock them up, and that's all great. But the inevitable in certain situations is going to happen. 323-538-2423 at Chad Benson Show is your Twitter. You can tweet at us. Americans apparently were bored. We're bored. I don't know if you guys were. Survey of more than 2,000 Americans find the average adult more than a third of the year spends their time mired in boredom. That's right. That's what they say. It's 131 days annually. They reach that number by converting the average percentage of a typical week that is not fun, boring, or dreaded, which was 36%. They took that into hours per week, which is 60 hours per week. They multiplied that by 52. That's how they came up with the number 131 days of unfun time during the year. Some people believe, well, their life's just too grown up. 73% miss the aspects of what they remember from their childhood, and they want more free time, less responsibility. Of course, who doesn't want that? I'd love to have more free time and less responsibility, but then you growed up. 323-538-2423 at Chad Benson Show is your Twitter. You could tweet at us. President Trump was talking today about a lot of different things, but something that came up that should be talked about is this mystery thing called billing when it comes to the medical world.
The Republican Party, I have to say this, is really very much becoming the party of healthcare. You see what we're doing. We're determined to end surprise medical billing.
And if you've ever gone through, you need to be an actuary, they need a forensic accountant, then you need to speak Latin. You need all of these things because it is just bizarre sometimes what's on there.
Surprise billings, which has been a tremendous problem in this country, has left some patients with thousands of dollars of unexpected and unjustified charges for services they did not know anything about.
Yeah. I mean, could you imagine just being able to send a bill to somebody? And that's why people go and dispute these things. So the good insurance companies will go and fight and say, no, it's not that way. It's not. Sorry, that's crazy. That's where you get the $90 for an aspirin and $50 for like a toothpaste and a toothbrush. When I worked, when I was younger, in between my soccer seasons, because back then you didn't make any money really playing soccer and any of that stuff, and like they do today. And I would work at a hospital, and I would just go stock stuff like aspirin, this, that, and the other. And they would joke about how expensive, like these aspirin right here, Chad, they're like $50. And you're like, are you kidding me? Maybe I should start dealing aspirin in the hospital. It's nuts. That's the mystery and the wackiness.
We're going to be announcing something, I think, over the next 2 weeks that's going to bring transparency to all of it. And I think, in a way, it's going to be as important as a health care bill.
Yeah, it might be. Little things like this can go a long way. And remember, if you could fix some of the medical billing and you can get transparency and you could fight these things, that's huge. It's just like when we talk about taxes. Don't tell me you're going to tax the rich. If that's what you really, really want to do, then change the code. Fix the code, and you'll keep more of their money. Otherwise, it's just lip service. 323-538-2423 at Chad Benson Show is your Twitter. Something I would love to see Congress do, besides fighting with one another over stuff that nobody cares about, is...
Congress is getting closer to taking new steps to criminalize robocalls.
Congress shares all of the concerns and annoyances that all of us do as we get flooded with more and more robocalls. Congress is looking to expand the statute of limitations potentially for robocalling offenses. And the biggest thing is they are extremely unhappy with the amount of fines that have been levied on robocallers with the amount of fines that have been actually collected. It's like $207 million to $7,000, which is paltry.
Yeah, that is super paltry. And every day, so far today, I've had 3 scam calls today. 3 scam calls so far. 3. What? And throughout the day, I'll get anywhere between a half a dozen to a dozen. And I won't check my voicemail for a week. I just don't do it for a while. Then I'll just check it, right? Because if anybody, you know me, you're texting me, right? So then I'll go, no, you have 36 messages that are missed, and they're all just robocalls.
And it really shows that kind of these standard fining and waiting and, for that money to come in is really not working either as a deterrent or clearly as an enforcement practice. And so we may be seeing more criminal prosecutions of these companies going forward. A lot of them are just outright scams. Obvious that a fraud would be something that would be law enforcement would be interested in rather than simply, a simple penalty. Yeah.
And a lot of them, I mean, most of them that I get, we talked about that one the other day from Moratoria or wherever it was, the one ring, then you call back and then they charge you some absorbent route. They put it on your bill. But a lot of them are, don't hang up. It's me, your coach. Do you want to make $7 million, gazillion a day? Let me tell you how I did it. Blah, 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 blah.
I think some of this stuff has broad bipartisan support, which, is sort of rare these days. And so I'm sort of hopeful about that. Already we've seen in the Senate a bill which would essentially mandate this private sector solution to caller ID authentication. So I think that is something that may happen as well in the House. Lawmakers seem to have an appetite for it.
Yeah. I would God, wouldn't it be great? And how many of you listening have gotten phone calls from your number? Right? How many of you listening have gotten phone calls from your number? Too many. Too many. Most of these, they're they go and they set up either in Florida or they set up, in one of the islands. And so reaching them or getting to, no matter how many fines that you give them, or chances of that happening is slim to none. And then think about this, coming up in the next 6 months or so, it's really going to ramp up with the robocalls from who? Politicians, which they can't get rid of because politicians aren't going to get rid of their own robocalls. So then you're going to get double the robocalls you get now, which is already too many. If you're going to be bipartisan about anything and you guys can't come up with any agreement, can we all agree that this is truly annoying? Republican, Democrat, independent, communist, fascist, doesn't matter. It's annoying. 323-538-2423 at Chad Benson Show is your Twitter. Somebody texted. We were talking about gas prices earlier. He texted. It says, I paid $4.21 for gas. I drive 240 miles a day round trip because it's the only place I can afford to live. California. Yeah. That's what's for dinner. Oh, God. It's crazy. I just don't know. I don't know how people do it. I don't. I do not know. And by the way, people in California is a perfect example of continuing to allow the people that run that insane state to just grab you by the nose and lead you around. Oakland's going bankrupt. So they're already taking the gas money that they've stole for years, and then they put a new gas tax on, and then they promise not to take it. And what have they done? They're taking it so they can pay pensions and try to get themselves out of debt. That's not fixing roads. But it just shows you, man, when you have a state that is just so one party, they can do anything they want. 323-538-2423 at Chad Benson Show is your Twitter. That's why we need to hold these people accountable, whether it's at the local level, the state level, or the national level. If we don't hold them accountable, then we're getting everything that we deserve. Butcher Box is what you deserve. The best. They got a barbecue bundle going on right now. New York strip steaks, baby back ribs, right? 2 pounds of ground beef, plus all of the other cuts of meat. That's the bonuses they're giving you, and they're taking $20 off. What do you get? The best beef around. The best, right? The best chicken. Organic, free-ranging. Grass-fed, grass-finished beef. You get what I'm saying. Best pork, sockeyed salmon, best cuts, best qualities, less than $6 a meal. It is the ultimate barbecue bundle. $20 off, and all of the other yum-yums. Get ready for it, kids. How do you get the baby back ribs? How do you get the New York strip steaks? How do you get the ground beef on top of everything else? Simple. Go to butcherbox.com/Chad. 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 It's the Chad Benson Show.
Take a fake news break. Check out the really important news of the day at our website, ChadBensonShow.com. Once there, click on Chad's free podcast and get real. The Chad Benson Show, where truth and the American way live. Print free.
This is Jim Ryan in Texas. The rising numbers of families arriving from Central America means that increasingly Border Patrol agents like Herman Rivera spend their days providing food, water, and medical help to the newly arrived before then busing them to detention facilities.
So it takes up a lot of hours, and what happens is it just leaves a lot of areas vulnerable to people trying to avoid apprehension and narcotics.
In April, more than half of the migrants apprehended at the southwest border were traveling as families, many with children as young as infants.
Yeah, the wall, all of these things, the battle that we have, until we start forcing our laws when it comes to immigration, it means very little, right? And remember that there are certain places, and I'm not just talking about, certain geographical areas that are just tough to build a wall on. There are certain places that you're going to continue to see massive immigration, and they will eventually funnel to there and wander through. And that is the tribes. Tona Odom Nation, Arizona, said, no, you can't build a physical barrier here. We may allow you to put some towers up, some of the virtual. But when we were talking to the Border Patrol, they told us, look, they won't allow us. They won't even allow us to put in certain areas any kind of path, concrete, to get down to the areas that we need to get to. They're just not. And, you could talk about, well, are they getting something from the cartels and a lot of that, stuff and the coyotes? We can argue that all day. It's possible. It's not like we're going to know or not, right? They're not going to come out and go, oh, yeah, they pay us a ton. But there's a big fight. They don't even want the virtual. And when you go down, you look at Tucson and the amount of issues that they're having, right? And several of these other places, I'm telling you, this is a big issue. And they've already said, now, no, we'll let you put up some virtual barriers, but you will not have a physical barrier here. Will not. Well, where are you going to go? The path of least resistance. And if you can't get there, the Border Patrol, they don't make it easier for them to come on. What do you think is going to happen? 323-538-2423 at Chad Benson Show is your Twitter. You can tweet at us. I don't know about you guys, but we have survived this.
We've talked for a long time about approaching a constitutional crisis. We are now in it.
You keep using the word. I don't think it means what you think it means.
Constitutional crisis. Day. Well, I don't know what day it is. It always seems to be one. But we'll see. We'll see. I just keep telling everybody, still your president. Call it a constitutional crisis all you want. He's still the pilot of the airplane that's 35,000 feet in the air. 323-538-2423 at Chad Benson Show is your Twitter. Speaking of air, producer Phil loves space. Do you know, Phil, if you could drive a car straight up, it would take you less than an hour to get to space. Take you a lot longer to get to the moon, but just to get to space, not too long. Get you right there in about an hour. Have a good rest of your day. I see Friday tomorrow as always. Night, Jack.
This is the Chad Benson Show.